So the lecture 5, I'm gonna to introduce the parts of production, the supplier, producer. Okay. So if we're so if we are a producer, we care about the profits. Profits comes from the consumer's demand, competition, and the cost of production. The production function is very important because if we know the production function, it's a key of a firm of a firm how to work how to work. So we simply just set a production function at as the quantity equals to the function of two inputs, it's labor and capital. For the labor part, the wages is price of labor, and sounds like human sides. But the rental is price of capital, and so like machines, like land, like whatever in your firms, not labor. Here we derive it as capital. So we have a short run production, that is the quantity equals to labor and average capital. We just use the symbol K bar to symbolize it. So the marginal product of labor is MPL. It's how much more product one more unit of labor gets. How much more labor that is product one more unit of labor gets. And it's diminishing the marginal product of labor. So it's a dq over dl. Okay. So let's short run production. And before we talk about long run production, I want to introduce some concepts. As we have different types of inputs. The variable inputs we can change and we can optimize. That is variable inputs. A fixed input is that in the short run, and in a certain time we can't move it, we can't do anything with that cost. So takes a while to change. That's a very short run. The short run is we define this that labor is variable. We can fire people if we want at any time. The capital is fixed because in short run we must pay a lot of rentals, so we don't have that money to change our fixed inputs. So the capital is fixed. The long run, meanwhile, the long run is L and K both variables because we can optimize all the input factors in the long run. So talk about long run production. Just like we have the in different curves, we have isopoints. Different curves hold a constant utility on that curve, and the isopoints is combination of the capital and labor, and yields same production. It's a very similar concept of indifferent curve. So just like MRS, we also have marginal rate of technical substitution, MRTS. That is negative your marginal productive labor over the marginal productive capital. It's MRTS. Just like um yeah, it's long run production. And in this demand part, we have MRT. That's a market that is all the consumer in the market to to de- to decide what to design the price ratio, whether we should change whether we should trade off one thing to another thing. But here we are firm, so we don't have a really like really a thing like MRT. That is how the market told us. We don't have that. We don't have that. Okay. So just like an indifference curve, just like a utility function, we have perfect substitutable inputs. That is, we don't care about capital and labor. That's a thing. Same thing. And we also have non-substitutable inputs. That is, if we have one if we like a shovel and labor, if we have one shovel and one shovel needs to be matched to one labor. So if we have given a certain amount of labor, if we have lots of shovel, didn't do nothing because there are no labor to to use it to use those. Okay. Yeah, it's a very similar form form like a utility. It's isochords. Okay. So just like demand maximization, we have cost minimization because if we want to do make profit maximization, we need to lower our cost as much as we can. So just like budget constraint line, we also have ISO cost line. It's a cost function and it's a labor times wages plus a capital times rental. Yeah, it's a downward slope and it's a minimize. That is just like a price ratio. We have this MRT as equals negative the marginal product of labor derived by marginal product of rental of capital, and it should equals to wages over rental rate, just like a price ratio. They should be the same. So that's all. It's all in a long run production because in the long run production we are able to optimize our capital at our capital cost. In the short run, we don't have lets. In the short run, the capital is fixed cost. We don't move that. We don't maximize it. So the difference from demand curve and the supply curve, the supplier parts is that the producer have a long run expansion path, mix of capital and labor. You use as change production. If linear production function, and depends on price ratio. Um, so that is we have another line to decide to decide whether we should or what the reasonable expansion path we should have been. Let me just thought it again. This mix of capital and labor you use as change production, just like wage and rental ratio, you change it. So if linear production function, that means if it's a linear production function, that is you don't really care about whether it's wages and whether it's a capital. So that then depends on price ratio. Yeah, all depends on it. It's a key of expansion path. Okay. So the next lecture we'll talk about short run production. Here, express we just set our capital to average capital. So it's K bar. And we have cost function, we have a production function. And remember, the capital in the short run cost is fixed cost. It means doesn't change by how much you produce. And here is another interesting concept is sunk cost. Initial investments you need to get back fixed in the long run. So that is even if you pay for it and it's gone, even if in the long run you can't just take back those costs. It's called sunk cost. So that is. And we also have variable cost, which is labor. The cost changes by how much you produce. Marginal cost, we just differentiate the cost function. We get a marginal cost, which is DC C cost respect we differentiate respect to the quantity. So the conclusion is wages times. So the conclusion is the marginal product, marginal product of labor, um, inverse times the wages. Wages what you have to pay the workers, and 1 over marginal product of labor is how productive workers are. Okay, so it's marginal cost. Average cost is just a cost derived by cost derived by Q. It's cost per unit produced. Okay, so the minimum of average cost equals to the marginal cost equals to average cost. It's a minimum line because if the marginal cost is a minimum, then the next unit of labor is also so in at that point every unit of labor is low cost, and it's if the marginal cost and if we get more labor, the cost will be higher than than the marginal cost of this labor. So the average cost will be higher if we add more labor because they cost more. So the minimum of average cost is at the point where the marginal cost line equals to the average cost line intersect. That's the minimum. Okay. So here is an example. We have the production function, and we can find the related formula, that is labor equals to the q squared over k, and we given the wages by the rental is 10, and the average capital is 1. cap Capital is 1. So we can um so we can draw this cost function, and yeah, to differentiate the cost function, we get marginal cost to over q. To derive by q, we got the average cost. So let's about should run cost curve. Here's another interesting concept, is returns to scale. That is, well, we given a same production function. What if we just um given a um two types of labor, two types of capital at the same time? So if it is constant, that is the two times the production function equals to the production function inputs is 2L and 2K. Increase is greater and decrease is smaller. Okay. So um productivity is, we add another variable, that is productivity is highly related to technology or something, like machine, like watts. The revolution of the revolution in 7669. I remember that. So yeah, it's very important for a firm. For a firm, a recitation here is don't we need to look how we need to know how to how much we need to produce as a long run supplier. So just like we find the intersect, or find the point of that MRT equals to MRS. Here we set the MRT as equals to the wage and rent ratio. So it's optimal cost. Isoquants, we also um, find the intersection here. So that's all about the production. That's all about the producer parts. Thank you for listening.